Get it going. Man, I still got it. I still got it. There's a sweet spot on that bell. If you get it up here, it kind of doesn't clank. Anyway, I'm not AJ. We're going to meet today. You'll see a slide here in a minute. Our guys are down in Guatemala, where they're 2 hours ahead of us. So they're probably out there working right now. Hopefully. Okay, we're going to run around real fast. I don't see any visiting Rotarians. Any visiting Rotarians? Oh, yes, we have one. Stand up.
Hi, everybody. Grace. I was your exchange student 9 years ago, and now I'm a member of Rotary and also Arcata Noon.
Before we go too far, big news on the Rotary front. They changed the rules of Rotary. And Rotary used to be like a program of Rotary. Now Rotary is brought right up with Rotary. They're exactly the same level as far as membership. Instead of being some little puppy here, they're full-blown guys, and Rotary sees them as the future. So they've really jacked up the Rotary in the world of Rotary. So, guests of Rotarians. So let's work. We're going to go like around the room.
Jesse Amos is visiting us again. Taylor looks like going to be sponsoring him to join our club. And around the bike.
Cool. All right.
This is Miss Stephanie Lane. She's Director of Alumni Relations, Humboldt State University.
You see her walking the sideline. We're going to go to a basketball game. Matt.
Jamie Anderson with me. Hello.
Who do we have up here?
My name is Elliot. I'm part of the local Toastmasters group.
All right.
And I heard we were collaborating.
Well, you're probably sick. You need a lot of work when you see you. Yes, I joined the club in 1992 and we chartered. I was the club president in 1998 and 1999. Count the years. A long time. We ran the club at that time. All of our technology was a carousel slide projector. Awesome. At times. So AJ's put this together for me. Maggie's assisting as we go through. Here, I'm going to run pretty fast because we have really a lot to do. Oh, first of all, I'm going to pass these around. We got a couple of books of thank you notes from third graders. We gave out the dictionaries to third graders at 3 schools in Arcata. We've been doing that for at least 20 years now, since since Wendy Madsen was here. I guarantee you some kid looked up the word Uranus. A little pressure being up here, I not just have to comb my hair and brush my teeth. I got to make sure I don't lose all the loops.
Nailed it.
Oh, see, this is involved. Okay, I got two teasers from Guatemala. This is the gang. They're going to do a program. We'll get the whole deal. This is not new for our club. We went down the project to Vigo. I went 3 different times, and it really is a whole different level of Rotary to put your hands on and make a difference in somebody's life in another country. I mean, sometime in your Rotary, time, if you ever get a chance to do that, do that. So, instruction is started. Okay, Tomas. Tomas is our exchange student from France. We've had an exchange student every single year since 1992. In a couple of years, we actually had 2.
Did you close it? See, I love this. Makes me look smart.
While we got a second, I was going to say something. I'm Amy from Wild Horses. The very first Rotary project our club ever did in 1992 is we went up to Doug Jagger's place in Trinidad. Doug Jagger was a former instructor at Humboldt State University, and we rebuilt horse stables. He had a program where he was providing horse access to people with disabilities. He had a ramp, he had a little crane, he could lift them up and swing them out and set them on the horse, and it was for disabled people to be able to ride horses. And we thought that was a great project, so we went up there and we put new floors in them, we painted them, we put new roofs on them, and I got my little X-Acto knife out and I made an Arcata Sunrise Rotary logo and I slapped it up and sprayed painted the side of the building. So that was our very first project, had to do with horses and access to people that didn't usually have access to that kind of a thing. And you just have to ring it.
No, the mouse is gone. You guys can see it there, right?
It's treat the two screens like they're right next to each other. So
Get up here.
Maybe going 8:30 today.
No, I'm gonna give her a big fat thank you for work. No presentation, no presentations.
This doesn't happen with carousel slide projector. Next.
Yeah, but everyone has to bring in their own little carousel.
There it is.
Okay, now you're
For president.
So last weekend I went with Andres to Sacramento, and so we went like for like 2 days there. So on Christmas Saturday we went to Old Town Sacramento. It was pretty interesting. I really like the architecture. It's more like there is like very touristic, so you have like a bunch of like candy shops and stuff like that. It was pretty fun. And then on Sunday, so we went also to the Railroad Museum. It was pretty fun to see like all the old tracks and stuff. On Sunday we went to the Capitol and we visited the Capitol. It was pretty interesting. It's like very huge buildings and pretty beautiful. This is like the small town or something. This is the whole, it's pretty impressive. Some picture outside the Capitol. And so in the afternoon we went for a trike ride. It's pretty interesting. I've never seen this kind of bike before. It's basically a bike that has 3 wheels and you just like lay on the bike. It's pretty fun. So we went like around the American River, I guess. And so it was pretty fun too. We also, and so on the way back we went through Reddings and to see the sundial bridge, which was really impressive. I really like the architecture and like you have a really nice view from it. We also went to Riverville when we went for a small hike. It was really beautiful, and there was some picture from the road, the mountains and stuff. And we also visited, there was, on the way back, there was a small like Tibetan temple. It was really impressive. They were like very lost in the middle of the mountains. It's really beautiful, and I really loved it. And so that was last weekend. And yesterday we went with some friends to the beach, and the beach fire. It was really beautiful and really fun. So it was a great time.
Okay, thank you.
She's mentoring me.
so switch back to the other side.
Oh, that's easy. And now how do you get it back to the next part like you said?
And then you
It takes a village.
Yes, we were. Hey, I don't know of any recognitions today, so we're gonna just keep working. We got a lot of stuff to do today, so I'm gonna keep.
Oh, Michael's got a recognition.
Huh?
Michael.
I want to recognize Carol for organizing the highway cleanup last Saturday.
We had a small but mighty crew.
We got a shorter strip than we used to have because somebody picked up a piece of it, but it's still. I usually do at least one of them a year, and the thing I like to do is I always partner up with the Interact kids because I love to get there and ask them, where you go to school, what's going on.
They were supposed to show up, but they didn't.
Yeah, get
Yeah, it was great, that's right.
Yeah.
So we got it done.
Oh, it's okay. Chat among yourself. Wow. Never seen that one.
Okay. Okay.
You're on. There's too much pressure.
Okay, you can all send your recommendations. I'm going to have Brett tell us about this, and I'll run through the slides. If you got a couple slides to run through, Brett, go quick.
Yeah, is there one before this, or?
Okay, so this is a bicycle repair station that the Community Service Committee donated money to the city of Arcata to purchase.
Whoa, I heard that.
And it's a project the committee really got going before I became active with it, and we were able to get the city after some months to finally get a location, and they went and bolted it down right in front of City Hall. And this first one right here is a stand, so you can hang a bike on it while you work on it. And then the smaller one in the back is a pump, so you can pump up your tire. And I don't know if you can go back to the other one. Yeah, so and then inside there's a bunch of tools that hang on steel cables, so people can come and do the, tighten up a nut or whatever on their bike. And then the last one, and then the best part is that people actually are using it. So I've seen multiple times people out there working on their bike, doing something to it as they pass by.
So the big thing's getting the word out that this thing exists. We might even think about some other ones. Yeah. Once you got one, the hard part is you got to worry about vandalism, so you do because you do. So that's one reason it's right from the city hall, because at least there's somebody there a lot of the day. Amanda, we're going to have a craft talk. Craft talks are one of my favorite things. During my Rotary year, we brought in new Rotarian Howard Stauffer. He was the first to use the PowerPoint to assist us craft talk. Rotary
How to switch around.
This is my life. Amanda knows.
It's my life. How'd you download this, man? It's right, just, you can't use that internet. No, it opens on internet, and we don't have internet.
Oh, she is so ready. She's got it on a USB. No problem.
Keep talking, Craig. We were gonna what else? A little more Rotary history.
Oh, we'll be selling Girl Scout cookies after the meeting.
What kind do you have? Mary, what kind do you have?
We have a bunch of them, but we have almost all of them in the car.
Oh,
And we have to order from
It's because I wanted to advance work.
Is it up there?
Okay, we'll go from there. Oh, perfect. Okay. I think it'll work, but we'll find out. All right. I'm Amanda Nelson. I was born on November 2nd, 1990, so you can do the math. I keep telling my dad I'm joining Rotary, and he says, oh, I feel so old. I spent my childhood going to Rotary meetings with my dad when my mom was going back to school to become a teacher. So, and he was always the youngest Rotarian in the club. Still claims to be the youngest Rotarian in the club, which might be true. In his club. In his club. So that's the club that I grew up in, was an old man's club. I was born in Berkeley, California, but my family's all from northern Idaho, so this is going to be my journey from Berkeley to Idaho and back to here. So little Amanda. Here's some nice pictures of me being really little. When I was about 7 years old, I got this hat, and then I wore it for the next 10 years. pretty dang close. I wore it every single day, so I have kind of a tenacious focus on things, and that was commitment to style. So when I made it through junior high, high school years, and then I went on a Rotary exchange. So I knew I wanted to go on exchange from a very young age. I grew up with exchange students in the house. We had exchange students from all over the country. I didn't ever expect to go to a country that spoke English, but turned out in my benefit. I was assigned Australia. So I spent my junior year in high school in Australia, which was amazing. Exchange is an amazing program. It changes lives. It also gets Rotarians, so we should always support it. And Thomas here doing such an amazing job. This is my exchange in a nutshell. I was in Australia, so I ate a lot of meat pies. I learned to drive on the wrong side of the car with my host sister. I was in southern Australia, kind of on the beach, a lot like here. So lived on a dairy farm, lived with a family that surfed. My host dad here would constantly take me out of school because none of my classes counted anyway. So I would go to work with him, and he was building fences. So then I graduated high school and thought I'd get a job as a raft guide. Good job. It's exceptional, which I loved. It was a lot of fun, and I've spent all of my childhood and adult life doing as much as I can outside. And I thought I'd go to Humboldt. I planned on Humboldt. I came to Humboldt on a trip with a friend we did a college trip, and I drove through Humboldt. I was like, all right, I'm done. California accepts admissions in November. Everyone else is January. Humboldt State it is. So I came here. I got a degree in oceanography. I graduated in 4 years. Going to the ocean a lot. While I graduated, I took up diving, which is a passion of mine. I love diving. I don't dive as much as I love to. I also thought I'd stay in shape for rafting. Join the rowing team.
Yeah.
If you know anything about rafting, you spend a lot more time drinking beer than working out. If you know anything about college athletics, you spend a lot less time drinking beer than working out. So this changed my life. College athletics has changed my life. You all may have an idea of what I do. This is me here. You're not supposed to look out of the boat. I started from auspicious beginnings, and I spent 4 years rowing, and I finished with the national championship. So, this picture here is me and my little sister. I got her involved in rowing as well. She is a lot smaller than I am, so she coxed for the Western Washington program, and she also won a national title the year after I did. So, and she also went on exchange, Rotary exchange, to Norway. So it's in the family. Someday I'll get her to the club if I can get her to California. So then, since then, I finished college, graduated, like anyone should. After a brief lapse out of athletics, I came back and started coaching the women's rowing team with Robin. It's in my blood, can't stop it, love the ocean, love being outside. And then last year, then I got a dog. Most important part, got Jack. Jack joined the family. A few other things also happened. I got married. That was also important. We bought a house last year, so these are big steps, order of importance. And then I graduated from being a coach. So now I'm the compliance officer at Humboldt State. I take my job very seriously. But in all seriousness, I love it. I love what I do. I love the college athletes and being around them. This is a picture from the beginning of every year. I get to tell them all about NC2A compliance. This book is what is it, NC2A compliance that I'm holding here. It's really interesting stuff. The athletes love to learn about it, but we have a good time with it, and I think I change how they approach it and help. I try every day to help them be more successful and while still being in compliance. And then also get lots of opportunities to help out with athletics. Now I get to volunteer with you guys as well. This is doing a trash cleanup on the bayfront with a bunch of the different teams. In my free time, when I'm not helping out with athletics, I love to travel. Went to Mexico with Scott, Hawaii, and go backpacking and spend as much time outside and in the world as I can.
All right, thank you.
Scott's taking that.
Scott's ribs.
Yeah.
I think the statute of limitations has run out, but when I came to Humboldt, actually the football coach got me in school. Humboldt Forest was packed, you couldn't get in, but the football coach could get 6 people in no matter what. And so what they did, and we were Division 3 at that time. What they did is got you a job. I don't know if they can do that anymore. They got you a job at the sawmill.
NC2A probably won't allow.
No, actually, we are allowed to give jobs to athletes. So if you have any jobs and you want an athlete, I can
Yeah, it was Saturday at the sawmill. Okay, this is called a Rotary Minute, but it's going to be about a Rotary 20 seconds. Rotary Peace and Conflict Resolution, Rotary's been doing it. It's like the third page in your current Rotarian. There's a website reference for it. And I found from looking that up that they do up to 130 fellowships. And so far since 2002, there have been 1,300 people go through this program. In the Youth Exchange Program, we say we're creating peace in the world, one exchange student at a time. This is another way to create peace in the world, is people who are trained in peace and conflict resolution as a focus of their studies. So I'm going to run through these real fast. The most important slide, here are the countries in yellow that have universities that are certified by Rotary International to conduct these programs. There are 2 programs, a professional development and a master's degree program. There are different qualifications for those. And the slide I kind of like is this one, because here's where these people are actually working in the world. It shows you that they've spread themselves out among, a lot of it has to do with international, a lot of it has to do with communication. The idea of Rotary is to put these people on the ground, and you can't, you know, it's kind of, creating peace is kind of like global warming. You can't just go fix it real fast. You have to fix it. You have to just kind of keep working at it, working at it, working at it. So upcoming events, we've got the Chamber of Commerce event coming up, and folks in the Chamber know about that. They're going to go there. History Day is coming up. We're always looking for people to help judge the projects. I did it one year, and it's pretty interesting to see the kids. Some of them tend to have a pretty myopic view of things, like they'll pick one thing and say, this is the answer. You know, and so you go, well, you might look at the other side of the story, you know. District training assemblies. Harry Johnson tried to call him this back when he was there, and they revolted. They said, no, it's called assembly, it's called assembly. And he said it's leadership training. The old DGs had a fit about it. But anyway, it's a great way to learn things about Rotary. There's breakout sessions on a lot of different aspects of Rotary. I've been to a jillion of them over the years, and I always come back and learn something from being there. About Wine Festival, that's an event conducted by the New Club.
We want to talk about it.
Okay.
I want to also let you know that there's a district training assembly in Santa Rosa on April 11th, and so they should be interchangeable. So if you can't make the March date, like I can't make the March date, I'll be.
Yeah, that's a big deal to have them too, because when we set up Harry Johnson, we set up the gym and venues at CR. Is a huge thing to set those things up, and to have actually the district is trying to make it much more available by having them, you know, one at this end and one at that end of the district, where we go from Petaluma to, you know, Delmar County.
Is the March one, sorry, is the March one all day?
No, they're half a day. They start about 9, they end about 1.
Okay.
Perfect timing for you to come to the Wine Fest after.
Good segue.
So we're doing a few new things with the Wine Fest this year. If you went last year, you might have noticed it was very crowded, very packed in there. So this year, we are limiting our ticket sales to 350 tickets to make it kind of a more exclusive event, get you better access to the vintners. We are also going to have an extra half an hour starting at 5 this year instead of 5:30, so more time to drink wine. And in addition to that, and because of that, the ticket prices are $10.
Yeah, there's 65 this year and then 70 at the door. And you can get them from me, anyone in Rotary, anyone in Arcata Noon. I'll be at the meeting, so I'm probably the easiest. And then, what else?
We have the raffle this year. We're going to Costa Rica is the grand prize. The next prize is $1,000, and the third prize is a bunch of wine.
2 cases of local, 2 cases of local wine.
Yeah.
So, and then those tickets will be $20 each. One is 6 for 100. I also have those. And then you can buy tickets online at People Tickets as well.
All right. The new Rotarians attend our events. We tend to do theirs. Oh, we have oh, Amanda, you got to come back up again. The thing about a craft talk is it's one of the requirements to go from a Rotary red badge, which we give you when you first join the club. We have some requirements so that you learn how to. If you attend board of directors meetings, do a few things. And a lot of times we finish off with a craft talk. That's a lot of times the last one they fulfill. Once they fulfill that, we take out your red badge and give you a blue badge.
I think Nick needs that back. He's got a lot of red badgers.
Yeah, he's got them. Yeah, these are all like the things just taped in there. So
And you red badgers, keep working.
yeah, anybody with a red badge, keep working. Thank you, Amanda.
All right.
So we tend to attend theirs, they attend theirs. This is a great event. We've been there for a lot of times. It actually got so crowded I can't take Janice anymore because somebody might knock over the top of her off on the floor. So backpacks, not today because it's President's Week.
Okay.
So Backpack for Kids program we've been involved in for a number of years, supplying food to kids that are food challenged for the week. It's to get them through the weekend. So now, I'm actually pretty.
I have an announcement.
Okay, go
Or
ahead.
another event that I just want to tell you about. The Eureka Women's Club is having what's called a Sip and Spell. It's an adult spelling bee. It's next Friday, the 28th. And the idea is that you sip and some people are spelling, but you can buy drinks at half price for the contestants. So if you want to get, kind of get people off their game, you can actually buy drinks at half price for them. And it's also, would be a fun event. So if any of you guys are interested and know how to spell, it might be fun if anyone wants to pass this around. But
What's the date?
and it's to raise money to paint their building. They've got to get them keep the
What's the
building.
date?
It's February 28th. It starts at 5. Is that doors open at 5?
p.m.
Doors open at 6.
The competition starts at 7.
Oh, yeah.
So they can drink an hour before.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So
So easy words. Hard words at first and getting easier as you go, I would imagine.
that.
Okay, I want to hear this program, so we are moving on to program on dam removal. And now Andreas is going to do the introduction for us. We probably got a little technical stuff here.
Well, good morning, everybody. This is Dave Hillemeyer. He's the head of the Arcata Tribe Fisheries Department, and I had the pleasure of working with him for 16 years when I was doing river restoration on the Trinity River. And Dave and the Yurok tribe are tireless advocates for healthy rivers, clean water, and robust salmon populations. So,
All right.
thanks Dave for coming to talk to us.
Thanks for inviting me. Yeah, I'm the fisheries director for the tribe, and I worked for the tribe for about 25 years. And it looks like I have 20 minutes, is that about right? Okay.
That's the advance.
Okay.
To the right.
Okay, so I wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of the basin, the process that's led to where we are now in regards to dam removal, some of the benefits from dam removal, some of the potential short-term negative ramifications, things like that. So the Klamath Basin's 12,000 square mile basin, straddles Oregon and California. It's somewhat unique in that most watersheds are very steep in the upper portions of the watershed, not the Klamath Basin. It's very flat in the upper portion of the watershed. In fact, it's so flat that there's a lot of irrigation, a lot of agriculture that takes place in the upper basin. There's the Klamath Irrigation Project in this area right here. It's about 240,000 acres. And then above Upper Klamath Lake in the Wood River, the Sprague River, the Williamson River, you've got about 200,000 acres of irrigated agriculture. It's high desert. They average about 13.5 inches of rain a year. Volcanic geology, there's a lot of springs in the upper basin because of that geology. There are currently 6 dams along the Klamath River, and we're hoping to see 4 of them come out in 2022, the 4 largest by far. But there is a dam called Link River Dam right at the outlet of Upper Klamath Lake. There was a natural reef there historically, and when that dam went in, it actually went in to lower the level of the lake, not to make the lake deeper, and also to be able to control the flows out of the lake. And then there's also Keno Dam, just I think it's about 15 miles downstream of Link River Dam. That's to elevate the river so agriculture can divert water out of the reservoir upstream of Keno Dam. And then there's, of course, a dam, a large dam over on the Trinity River that I'm not going to talk about anymore today. So what led to where we are today in regards to hopefully seeing the dams come out in 2022? Back in the early 2000s, there was a lot going on, a lot of pretty contentious issues in the Klamath Basin, especially in regards to water flows. There was a curtailment or almost a complete shutoff of the Klamath Irrigation Project in 2001 due to a biological opinion, which is per the Endangered Species Act, is developed to protect endangered species, and coho salmon are listed as threatened under the Endangered Species Act. That got a lot of media attention. You may have seen some of that, but it's been quite a while though. But there was a lot of media attention nationwide about that curtailment for several months. And then the following year, the Secretary of Interior, Gail Norton, came out to open up the head gates to give water back to ag, but it was a very dry year, and there was not nearly enough water in the river. We made our concerns known about that and said that they were going to kill fish if they implemented the plan they proposed. And sure enough, later that summer, we had tens of thousands of fish die on the lower Klamath River while they're migrating up to spawn, largely because of low flows. And there was a pretty good run of fish too, so there's some really high densities of fish that were trapped in the lower river during warm water temperatures, and we had disease problems. The reason I bring this up because well, let me back up a little bit. Our executive director at the time, who has since passed away, Ewok Troy Fletcher, he was very forward-thinking, and he said, you know, the only people that are really winning right now are the lawyers, because we were involved in court case after court case to try to deal with these water issues. And he said, we need to just get together with the irrigators, see if we can come up with some long-term solutions. So the tribes, the farmers, the federal agencies, the states all got together, NGOs got together to negotiate a long-term water solution. At the same time, the FERC process had started for the dams, FERC and Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And that started in 2001 because the license was expected to expire in 2006. After thousands of pages of documents have been filed with FERC in regards to this application for the license, there was an administrative law judge hearing that dealt with disputed facts that were in these filings. And after that ALJ hearing, pretty much all of the issues were resolved that showed that those dams needed to provide fish passage and or come down. And then the agencies with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife and National Marine Fisheries Service, they have regulatory authority over issuing licenses. And they said that there would need to be fish passage at these dams that doesn't currently exist, both upstream and downstream. And there would also be a curtailment in the amount of water that could generate power because more water needed to stay in the river to support the red band trout population and the sucker population that was within the hydroelectric reach. And so Pacificor did the math, and they made the business decision that rather than spend several $100 million to try to address passage at these 4 dams, both upstream and downstream, that it would be best for them to join the negotiations with the folks and to seek removing the dams from the Klamath River. So that happened, these negotiations really started in earnest about 2005. 2006. We came up with a couple of agreements that were signed in 2010 called the Klamath Basin Restoration Agreement that dealt more with water issues and funding to address some of the water quality problems in the upper basin. But there was also a Klamath Hydroelectric Settlement Agreement. Those agreements required federal legislation that never happened. So they sunsetted on December 31st of 2015. But shortly thereafter, like immediately, the states of Oregon, California, and Pacificor got together and said, okay, that died. We didn't get what we hoped out of that. Let's still work on an amended Klamath Hydroelectric Settlement Agreement, which they did. And then in April of 2016, within 4 months basically, there was signing of the Klamath Hydroelectric Settlement Agreement amendment. And the Secretary of Interior, the governors of Oregon, California, and several other entities signed this amended Klamath Hydroelectric Settlement Agreement. So, a little bit about the dams. There's no fish passage, as I already said. They're not used to divert water to ag. They're not used to store water. They're not used to provide flood control. They don't produce, relatively speaking, they don't produce a whole lot of power. It's about 2% of Pacificor's energy portfolio. They do produce up to a maximum of about 165 megawatts, but typically they actually produce about half of that because of available water. And Pacificor they've gone a lot into wind energy. And I saw a quote from their spokesperson back in 2012 that said they had just developed about 1,600 megawatts of wind energy. I don't know what it's been since then. I just point that out that even highlights even more that this hydropower on the Klamath dams, these dams that some of them are over 100 years old, is not a huge part of the power that they produce. So some of the upstream benefits that we expect to see from dam removal, here's Iron Gate Dam right here, there's over 400 miles of historic anadromous fish habitat, anadromous being fish that go out to the ocean and come back to spawn, spend most of their life out in the ocean. There's over 400 miles of historic habitat up there, especially a lot of cold water habitat up there from the springs, from the volcanic geology that used to be really good spring Chinook habitat. That's really important because spring Chinook in the Klamath Basin are hanging on by a thin thread. There's really only two very wild remnant populations in the South Fork Trinity River as well as the Salmon River, and both of them are not doing well at all. Currently petitioned to be listed under the Endangered Species Act, both by the federal government as well as the state government. So the access to that thermal refuge is huge. I'm going to go through this real quick. The intent of this slide in the brief version is just to show these blue circles up there, which highlight some of the thermal refuge. You've got a couple of hundred cubic feet per second spring coming out where J.C. Boyle Dam is currently located just downstream of there. And then in the Williamson and the Sprague, there's a cold spring creek where you can see a couple of, I don't know how much water, but it's a large volume of water just coming out of the ground right there. It's a really beautiful spot, but super cold water, and then the Wood River has a lot of spring influence. Crater Lake is actually in the headwaters of the Wood River. But it's not pristine. It's not like the Elwha River where they had Olympic National Park upstream of the dams. We have a lot of development, especially in regards to agriculture that I'd already mentioned that takes place in the upper basin. So there are water quality problems, and so I'm just letting you know that there's other issues that need to be resolved in the basin. I think that the dam removal is by far the largest landscape scale restoration project that we could do, but there's still a lot of work to do. They have a lot of, it's very hyper-eutrophic in the upper Klamath Basin, so there's a lot of algae blooms in many years, and occasionally those algae blooms will result in dissolved oxygen crashes because the algae settles on the bottom, decomposes, and uses up a lot of oxygen. So the run timing, and that happens with the upper Klamath Lake as well as above that Keno Dam that I pointed to earlier that is used for agriculture. So the run timing of the fish is going to be very important, and I think Mother Nature will sort that out over time. And it'll probably end up being something similar to what happened pre-dams. But they're going to need to be able to get through these areas of poor water quality at the right time of the year. And it appears that spring Chinook will not have a problem. And there is a very productive red band trout population where you get salmon-sized red band trout in the upper Klamath Basin right now. So downstream benefits, one is water quality. Every year there are toxic algae blooms that occur in the reservoirs of the hydroelectric dams. This is a picture of Kako from the air. This is for the Klamath River, relatively clean water coming in. And you can see the toxic algae bloom taking place right there. There will also be a more natural thermal regime, given you have these relatively large reservoirs. They keep the river warmer later into the fall, early wintertime period, which can delay migration of adults going down upstream. And they also keep the river cooler in the spring, early summer months, which can delay growth and has the fish going to the ocean later. That's not what the fish evolved with, so it's not good for supporting healthy populations of fish. It could contribute to things like the fish kill that we have because the migration is delayed. So we think that it'll spread out the run timing of both the juveniles and the adults. It'll also restore the sediment budget. Right now the reservoirs collect all the sediments that come down. There's not a lot of sediments from the upper basin because of the volcanic nature, but there are still sediments and there are tributaries in the hydroelectric reach that input sediment to the basin as well. There was, back when the agreements got signed, the KVR and the KHSA got signed, there was a scientific team from the Department of Interior that they did some really good research. One of their findings was that if both of those agreements were implemented, it would increase fall Chinook population by about 83%. It'd be about 83% more productive. But that's a little bit misleading relative to this talk because the KVRA went away. Now we just have the hydroelectric agreement, and we don't have an estimate on it. But the result in increased production, but providing access to over 400 miles of habitat is going to be huge for the population. This is to talk a little bit about the disease, just very quickly. We have a really big juvenile disease problem in the Klamath River. There's been in 2014, 2015, 85 and 95% of the, or 81 and 91% of the fish, the juveniles headed downstream that we sampled were infected by this disease. What the disease does, the adults when they're coming upstream, they get infected by this little tiny parasite. And then when the the adult fish spawn, their carcass rots. It releases what are called myxospores that are then ingested by these little tiny polychaete worms, a couple of millimeters in length. Here's a picture of a boulder that has a gazillion of these little polychaete worms on them. And when the myxospores are in there, they multiply. One myxospore can turn into several hundred what they call actinospores, which are these little critters that then get released in the springtime when the juvenile fish are in the river. They infect the juvenile fish, and when they get in the fish's gut, it causes an infection that can lead to death. And so we're really looking to try to minimize that. We think that taking these dams out are going to go a long ways in that direction. I'm going to go back. Largely because right now we have a very armored substrate in the upper Klamath River because we don't have any sediment input because the reservoirs are capturing all this sediment. And so we have just big boulders mostly. If we get some smaller stuff in there, reintroduce this sediment, not only will it be sandblasting these little polychaete worms, but we'll also have smaller rocks that'll move when we get higher flows. And it's just going to make life more miserable for these polychaete worms. It should help to address that disease problem. There will be some high sediment loads from the dams coming out. Most of it is projected to be suspended sediments. There's currently about 13 million cubic yards of sediment behind those reservoirs. About 5 to 8.5 is expected to be eroded and go downstream. But 85% of that is suspended sediments. A lot of that is dead algae that is settled on the bottom of the reservoirs. And the thinking is that that stuff is going to go out during probably the first year, especially if we have a substantial flow event at all. And so the hope right now is the drawdown of the reservoirs will begin January 2022. And that will happen during the first 3 months. The reservoir should be completely drawn down by the end of March, which is when you start to see a lot of the juvenile fish using the main stem, coming in from the tributaries, using the main stem. And then the dams are going to come out. All 4 dams are planned to come out in one summer over about a 3 to 4 month period. So it's going to be a huge project. And there is expected to be some mortality. This is for like fall chinook. It's expected to be about 8% because most of these fish are spawning in the tributaries, so they're not going to be substantially affected. But there will be effects, and they'll be, depending on what species, they're projecting that first year there will be some mortality because of the dam removal and the high sediment loads. There will be, in regards to reintroduction, most of it is expected to happen passively, where the fish will just be allowed to stray into the new habitat on their own volition. The only exception to that will be with spring chinook, because the closest spring chinook population is so far away, being the Salmon River. It's over 100 miles away, that the state of Oregon is looking at doing some sort of a conservation hatchery in the upper Klamath Lake area to release spring chinook up there. And there's still a lot of work going on determining what is going to be the best source of broodstock to do that. So as I said, we're anticipating in 2022. It's not a done deal yet. FERC still, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, still has to grant the permit to take the dams out. The State Water Board is currently working on a CEQA document for the 401 permit, which is a water quality permit to be able to take the dams out. That they've put out 2 public drafts so far, and it seems that they're probably getting pretty close to being there to issue that permit, but don't want to speak for them by any means. There's an application that was submitted in 2016 to transfer ownership of the dams to the Klamath River Renewal Corporation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization whose sole purpose is to oversee the dam removal process. There has been, the prime contractor has been chosen after a bidding process, and that is Kiewit. They're currently working on, FERC has asked, the primary questions that they've received from FERC is, what if you don't have enough money? What if it costs $450 million and $5, where you can get that extra $5? And also about the liability, who's going to take care of the liability? So they've been working a lot on that, and they're supposed to have a guaranteed maximum price estimate back to FERC by the end of this month. And then the hope is that FERC is going to dive into the NEPA process, and that we're going to reach our goal of having the dams come down in 2022. Initially it was 2020, then it got delayed to 2021, now it's 2022. Hopefully it's not going to get delayed Iron Gate Hatchery, there's currently a hatchery up in the upper, right at the base of Iron Gate Dam that releases about 5 million salmon, Chinook salmon in the springtime and about 1 million in the fall time. That's going to go away because Iron Gate gets its water source from Iron Gate Reservoir. There are options where they can pump water to keep Iron Gate Hatchery going, but it looks like instead they're going to reinvigorate what used to be a small-scale hatchery about 12 miles upstream in Fall Creek, and they're going to reduce the production, and this is going to happen for 8 years post-dam removal. They're planning to use Fall Creek, and they're going to release about 2/3 of the current fall Chinook production. They don't release a lot of coho up there, but it's more of a conservation facility because coho are hanging on by a thin thread as well. And so there's going to be a conservation hatchery to try to keep coho going while they are introduced into this new habitat. And there is some really good coho habitat in one of the streams that feeds into the hydroelectric beach. And this is an old slide, and it just shows that we've fallen back 2 years. But it was 2020 for dam removal, is now moved over to 2022. And that's my last slide.
I've read that Trump is threatening to release a lot more water for the farmers upstream. What do you think are the chances that'll pass the courts? And then if it does, how will that affect the dam removal program and then the streams in general?
Right. Well, there's recently been news about Trump. He just came out to California a couple of days ago. That was more Central Valley centric. He's promising that they're going to get like 600,000 acre more feet in the Central Valley. But I guarantee you that's going to be contested in the courts, and that could go on for quite a while. We're currently in litigation over a biological opinion on water flows in the Klamath River, and it's yet to see BC. We're actually have a court hearing, our first court hearing next Friday down in San Francisco to deal with that. But it's unfortunate that KBRA did not go forward because we are basically almost in continual litigation because we are not getting the river flows that we feel that we need. And the Klamath populations have done extremely poorly over the last 4 or 5 years.
Global warming, you're in a rain shadow up there and it's already warm. Is it expected to get warmer? And if you take out the dams, will it be like just in time for the fish?
Well, yeah, I think so. Because of the thermal refugia, that's really one of the reasons that we want access to that thermal refugia is that could be a big thing we could do to help fish survive through the global warming that we're facing. Yeah.
So how are the dams actually removed?
It's going to be, some of them are earthen, so it's just going to be excavators digging out dirt and rocks that make up them. Some of them are concrete, so there's going to be chipping away at the concrete and hauling it away. Probably not going to be, it could be some dynamite, but it's not going to be a huge blow it up and then.
So what's the impact on the water quality of the earth being moved through it, the concrete being chipped away? What happens to the water then and the fish?
Yeah, most of that, the reservoirs are already dropping down, so during the removal, there probably won't be a lot of turbidity issues, but that first year and during the drawdown, there's going to be major turbidity issues. It's going to be very severe, but it is expected that the turbidity and the sediment load, or the sediment load that's going to be coming from the dams is going to be similar to what we see from the Trinity River on an annual basis. Yeah.
What's the estimated timeline for those fish to repopulate that area a lot higher upstream?
That's a great question that I don't have a good answer for. Yeah, I think a lot of it is going to be
not going up there for a long time.
Yeah, a lot of it's going to be wait and see, and part of the reintroduction plan is let's wait 3 generations, which will be about 9 to 12 years, and then if needed, consider some reintroduction efforts. But in other basins, fish have recolonized areas quite quickly. So, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Great. Dave, we thank you for the program. Back in the day, we used to do what everybody else did. We gave them a coffee cup, which probably was used for target practice a lot more for drinking coffee, because anybody who gives money probably gets a lot of coffee cups. So in lieu of that, a number of years ago, we changed over, and now we make a donation in your name to the Wheelchair Foundation. The Wheelchair Foundation is a 501c3 that Rotary's partnered with a number of years. And what they do is they supply wheelchairs in developing countries for people who have mobility issues. And these aren't just your garden variety down Arcata Plaza wheelchair. These guys are like trucks. They're built heavy. They've got 10-ply tires, you know, big knobby tires. They're the kind of thing that's not going to fail on somebody who's going to take that wheelchair. And it's not uncommon at all when people do these deliveries. People get brought in like sitting in a chair, and they carry the chair of the person, or they get carried in, or whatever. And you know, mobility is like a lot of things. I mean, having access and being able to move around has a huge change in somebody's life. So, you know, through this program, you're helping us, and we're helping you. And at some point, you know, a wheelchair will be given to somebody, and those things cost about $150. So throughout the year, we, you know, 2 or 3 wheelchairs are added to that program every year that we make other donations also. So thank you very much.
Fantastic.
You've done that. It's been fun running the meeting again after all these years. One thing you can see from all the things we've done today, we talked about dictionaries for 3rd graders. We talked about the international project where we have people on the ground right now. Rotary is the largest and the most effective service organization in the world by far. And we do it 2 ways. We do it with money we contribute to make things happen. We do it with our time to make things happen. You know, we're out at Peninsula School right here in our own community. We're building raised bed gardens so they can teach the kids how to grow vegetables. They can supply some of their own food. We've got this project going in Guatemala where a number of our Rotarians and Rotarians from other clubs are building a house for a family on land that they've got a little slice of land and they build. And it makes a huge difference in that family's life. So you don't, you know, and then we do big things too. I mean, we've talked about polio. We've been talking about polio since 1989. You know, we partner with UNICEF, we partner with the World Health Organization, we partner with individuals. Bill Gates has matched just like $800 million and up. I mean, I was at the Rotary convention in Atlanta, and I was in the crowd, or one of the plenary sessions. You go in, the room's so big, and so he's like this big, you know, on the stage. They got a big screen showing Bill Gates. So Bill Gates is up there talking about how he thinks his money is very well spent partnering with Rotary to wipe out polio in the world. And we can see from our latest, you know, coronavirus thing how, you know, if we don't completely kill polio, and we're only down to 1 country now. 2. And that's 2, Pakistan and Afghanistan. And the biggest problem there is people tend to kill the people that are out there giving life-saving drops to people. So you got some real walls there. But if they can, you know, start getting some of these countries, like the more recent countries like Nigeria and some of the Far East countries, you know, the longer you go, the more sure you are you got it cleared. So once we get it cleared, you know, you got to keep working on it. So, you know, because you're involved in this, and we do so many projects, nobody can be involved at all. I mean, the Peninsula School, the highway cleanup, this thing here. I mean, but because you're here, you are part of making all that happen with your dues, with your presence. The world's run by the people that show up. You've showed up. Thank you. I can't do that yet. I'm out of time. If I failed, I have to
All right, 768-057. 768-057. Hey!
What's the amount today if he gets the right colored ping pong ball?
120.
Whoa! Get away from
Yeah.
She got lunch instead.
All right. Then 768-059. Hey!
He should be a winner.
I should be.
He's always a winner, no matter what.
I'm a winner in my eyes.
Thank you for being here to our program. We appreciate it. You know, one thing, another benefit of Rotary, you get these programs and they're about what's going on in our community, what's going on, you know, with our city council, the county, and the important things that are happening in the community. A big shout out to the program community. They did a great job this year. Thanks to our guests for being here with us. I hope you enjoyed your time. Now I can